If there's a man who was ever more ready for this conversation, just because he's done interviews before, just because he's watched this series before, it is the guy in this conversation with me, Rick Tugman. He is a television director of sports and entertainment programming, and he joins me, yes, on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley. There he is. Rick, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate having you.
It's great to be here, Brian. Thank you so much for asking. I'm glad I can be here to share my experiences with you.
We're not only going to talk about those experiences when it comes to work, but we'll also learn about your personal side as well. But don't worry, we're not going to get into anything, out there. When it comes to work, though, how much of your waking hours are you either working or thinking about something work related?
Well, I have a problem sleeping as I've gotten older, and my mind's constantly working, and I think about the next thing I want to do, and where I've been, and where I want actually still want to go. I'm not sleeping as well as I should because the mind is constantly working. Sometimes I need to take a Xanax to shut it off to get a good night's sleep.
When you are dreaming, when you do get to sleep, how many of your dreams, what percentage are something connected to a work event or something in that sphere?
Very rarely do I remember the dreams that I have. I know we have them every night, so they say. I honestly don't remember them. I remember the scary ones where I like fall off a cliff or I'm drowning or something like that. They aren't too frequent. I have to tell you, when I do sleep, I sleep well. But I don't remember a lot of my dreams. But yeah, I have hopes and dreams we all have.
When you think about something that is, I think, attached to your love of entertainment and your love of media, we touched on this before the conversation, but even before this conversation, and even before we're starting to talk, I just had this sixth sense, Rick, that you had a love of science fiction. I don't know where that came from, but what am I getting at here?
When I was younger, I was always into science fiction. I remember the very, very first NBC Saturday Night at the Movies, or maybe it was Saturday Night at the Movies because I was home, or it might have been Sunday Night at the Movies, and the movie was The Day the Earth Stood Still, and it was also, I believe, when I saw it, it was the day that Martin Luther King was assassinated. So I sort of went to my father and I said, something happened. Some guy by the name of Martin Luther King passed away. But I was always interested in science fiction. So I used to watch like My Favorite Martian as a kid growing up at my parents' footbed, and I'd watch Lost in Space, and I watch Star Trek. I mean, a lot of people are Star Trek fans. So yeah, I've always been interested in sci-fi and even Battlestar Galactica. But I was much older when that came out. But it's I had a dream years ago, not a dream, but a wish that someone from Lost in Space would come and pick me up and take me away and take me into the entertainment business and the movies and films. And this is something I've always wanted to do, and it happened to me.
It did. And how has, in a sense, looking at this metaphorically, your love of space exploration, how does that compare or relate to your love of navigating entertainment,
Well,
navigating your career?
technology is an incredible thing. I mean, years ago, when we have a little pager about this big, and now we're all working with these things, and it's just changed so much. I mean, we didn't have any of this stuff years ago. I mean, none of it existed, and in a short 30, 40 years, the industry has changed. I mean, I look at, I'm a big fan of SpaceX. I mean, they're going up and saving Boeing. I mean, the astronauts from the Boeing thing, and up at the space station. It's just amazing some of the things that they're doing, and they're even talking about building. I heard today on the news talked to NASA spoke to them about building a ship that will move the ISS into out of orbit and into a permanent space. So I mean, you hear this stuff and it's like, wow, this is cool stuff. And then television. I started in its infancy. I started as a film courier for a TV station in Miami, and I used to pick up film in Fort Lauderdale because I live in South Florida, and even though I moved around a little bit, South Florida's been home for years and years. So I used to pick film up in Fort Lauderdale from a news crew, take it to Miami, have it processed, and then I'd go home, and then I kicked myself in the rear end, and I said, "Hey, stupid, why don't you learn about the business?" So I started in 7 days a week, 15 hours a day, learning, and that's how I got into television. Basically, one thing led to another, and here I am. So technology is an interesting thing because my business is no more film. Now it's videotape, and then it used to be microwaves. Now microwaves is sort of gone, and yeah, there's all these different transmission paths, and it's just constantly changing, and it's a hard thing to keep up with.
One of the things that has not been constantly changing is your work ethic. You mentioned it early on and what it took to really understand the business and everything involved in it. 15 hours a day, 7 days a week. This is not just some hobby. This is not just some passion. This is your life depending on, it seems like, making it in this career. When you put that type of sacrifice in it, why did it become like that for you, even at such a young age?
Well, I looked at, and I'm not going to sugarcoat education or anything like that. My father didn't go to college, but he became a very successful businessman. And I started, as I said, when I was 17 years old, 16 or 17, as a film career for a station in Miami. And like I said, I kicked myself and started coming in because there was that work ethic is something that was instilled to me from my family. So I felt it was important, if I want to learn about the business, this is an opportunity that will never come across again. And so I did that. I invested in it and in myself.
Not only your father, but your mom's presence as well. I saw on Facebook some of the touching remarks you have and have had about her and the presence that she had in your life. When do you think about her most during a day, any day now?
My parents are very close to me. I mean, well, they're no longer with me. They're very close to me. There's a picture right over here. There's a picture in the back of my near my laundry room. They're never far from me, and they were my best friends, and they were very supportive in anything I wanted to do. And that it's a wonderful thing. And it's a wonderful feeling to have that, because not some families are dysfunctional, and my family wasn't dysfunctional. They were very loving and supportive. And they said, listen, if you want to do it, do it. And you know what? That's what I did. And, they were behind me 100% or 1000%.
If they were able to see even now how much fun you're having, all the things that you are doing, how much of a thrill would that give you if you were able to seize on to their reaction right now?
Yeah, I think they would be very proud. I've been involved, not in one, but I've been part of many shows that have received Emmys, and I'm sitting with a couple of them back there. And I think they would be really, really proud, and they didn't see it, sadly. And I think they would just be like ecstatic, and they'd be bragging like crazy. And but yeah, that's how they were. They were, I'm a yeah, I miss them terribly. They were my best friends, and I wish I could see them more.
Well, obviously, their influences are within you every day. It's how you live your life. You are honoring and recognizing them by the way that you approach life. And you mentioned how proud they would be internally for you when you do begin to encompass and look at your career and all the different events that you've done, obviously a lot in boxing, soccer, you name it. If there's a combat sport, there's a big chance that you've probably done it, but you've also done a lot more of the mainstream sports as well. So there's really nothing that you haven't done. When you sit back and give yourself an opportunity to feel the pride within yourself, where does that come from when you think about what would cause that within you?
I just think it's the work ethic, and I was able to not impress. I don't want to use the word impress because I think it's the wrong way to say that. I think that the quality of the work that I had done as a technical director, I came up as a technical director, and I think the quality of that work has opened certain doors for me. There was a gentleman who used to direct the Mets. I'll give you his name. It's Jeff Mitchell. And Jeff liked me. And he was one of the four original directors that was hired by Fox Sports. So what happened was, is Jeff, um, got put me under contract, got me put on the contract for Fox Sports. That's sort of when my career sort of mushroomed, and it was from those opportunities that other opportunities arose. And again, I think it's because of the work ethic again. So
When you get that opportunity and you sense back then that this could be something that could open up, as you said, a lot more doors, how do you not, or how have you not allowed yourself to get overwhelmed by, hey, if I do well here, this could lead to that, that, and that. And if to say you're not an athlete per se on the field of the sport that you're covering, but there is a mental focus with these events, particularly the ones that can lead to greater and more. Within that, how do you stay grounded and have over the course of your career?
well, I've never let ego get in the way of the work that I do. I've never done that. Um, I'm proud of what I've accomplished. I'm proud of the work that I did as a technical director. Um, you got to remember there were in the NFL on Fox at least there were 8 crews working, sometimes 6 crews. I was one of the six crews. I was one of the 6 guys in the country doing the NFL on Fox. I went to baseball. I was on the contract for baseball, as I mentioned. I was one of 3 people in the country doing MLB. So I felt very, very fortunate, and I was able to do it for 19 years. And then we sort of parted ways, and we move on. We go on to different things. But I was it's again I don't look at it as ego or anything like that. It's just that these are things that I accomplished. I worked hard for it, and hopefully it's one of the rewards that you receive.
One of the rewards, and a few of them obviously that you have received, are behind you. You pointed out the Emmys, but you have been rewarded and reaping the rewards of a lot of enjoyment and doing much with when it comes to combat sports. You've gone in that realm a whole lot. And so much of that, I would think, Rick, is yeah, you've got the ring or whatever the surface that they're playing on, depending or competing on, depending upon what the event is. But with combat, there's a lot that's unexpected that can happen. How are you in the truck, in the production truck as a director, so good at planning for the unexpected, especially in a combat sport like environment?
Well, the thing with combat sports, as in any sport, it's important to listen to your announcers. Very, very important. They're out there. We're all telling stories, and there's an approach you have to take to tell that story. And so, listening to the announcers, I'm going to relate to something that was that happened to me in Mexico. I wasn't in Mexico, but we were doing a Remy broadcast from Mexico, and the announcers were talking about a cauliflower ear, and I don't speak Spanish, but I was able to speak enough Spanish and to get the cameraman around to shoot a close up of the cauliflower ear that was affecting the player. And these and so you got to finish the story, you got to tell the story, and these are, I feel these are important things to follow through. I mean, this is you have to satisfy an audience that's not there, that's not in the ring, it's not hearing what's going on, and you visually have to tell that story and bring that viewer into the ring.
What does it take, though, to be so emotionally and cognitively attached to what the viewer wants to know? Okay, I'm thinking about what they're thinking, and this is what we want to put on screen.
Well, that's the thing. I'm thinking about what they would want to see. It's not about what I want to see. It's more about what they want to see. Setting the picture, setting the scene, bringing the cameras in on a jib or using a wide angle lens to create a cinema look. I'm all about a cinema look. I like my shows to look a little different, the ones I direct. So I shoot through the ropes. I do this. I don't go up and down through the ropes. I don't, especially in my combat sports. I like to shoot through the ropes using a wide angle lens. I do that to create a different perspective for the viewer. Because most of the time you're seeing it from one angle, but then I feel to keep the viewer interested, you have to mix it up a little bit. It's important to mix up the coverage.
The mixing up of also the conversations that you're having with your teammates inside a production truck, how much talking is going on and how much talking is dependent upon the sport, the amount of people that you might be working on with said crew on said event?
Well, there could be anywhere from 30 to 40 people on an event, depending on how many cameras there are and how many replay machines there are. Um, the producer sets the pace of the show and how the show is going to flow and the elements in the show. It's my job to orchestrate his vision and create my own vision. And when I say orchestrate, I become a conductor basically. We have a meeting before the show, talk about what's going to happen. We don't know what's going to happen in the fight, obviously. We don't know who's going to get knocked out. We don't know who's going to win. No one knows that. But we have a meeting, and this is what we expect, and this is what we're going to do. And then I have a camera meeting with the cameraman, and I explain how I'd like to cover the matches or the show, or I like to do whether it's a baseball game or it's a volleyball game or a football game. You like to you don't work with these people all the time, so you want to create. I create notes for them and
Hmm.
explain basically what I'm looking for, and so I sort of convey that to them. And then, like I said, hopefully you deliver, and hopefully it registers, and you do that. So I'm on a headset. I'm sitting next to the producer. He's driving the train, so to speak. I'm driving the pictures, and from there, it's a team effort. It's not only just me, but it's a team effort, and you want to try and be cohesive with everybody on the show.
Driving the pictures is what you do. I see a really neat painting behind you. Obviously, pictures, there's an art to it. You're like, I think is that an elephant?
That's an elephant. Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I like that.
Thanks.
So,
Thanks a lot.
yeah, so the pictures and art, obviously, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
When you look at shots, and I know that this is really digging deep into the annals of the library of content that you have put on screen, but are there certain pictures, and what are they? Certain events, moments, screenshots of where art was at its most beautiful for you in what you captured at said moment of one drama filled event, whether it's sports or entertainment related.
Well, I directed basketball for CBS, and one of my producer at the time says, "Why are you shooting that? Why are you shooting that?" Well, I just don't believe you're shooting an empty stadium, and so I shot something artistic. Uh, there was an arch or something, and I created like an architectural look for a background for a font. It doesn't always have to be a wide shot from the stadium. It just doesn't. And I don't believe it does. Okay. And I think a lot of people get stuck in doing the norm. And I try not to do the norm. I try to make it look different. And you know what? Why not have, everyone shoots the lights for a background for a graphic. And, it's like, I don't like to do that all the time. I like to create, like I said, an architectural look, something that's different. So that's something that I strive to do. Not everybody agrees with it. Like I said, that one producer didn't understand what I was trying to do. But again, who says you have to always go to a wide shot? Where is it written that way? It's not written that way. So why can't you be a little more creative?
I love that idea. And especially with how much content is being created right now, it's more to me, and you would obviously know better than me, Rick, but it seems like volume of events and just getting them on screen sometimes is more important than the style of the broadcast or the aesthetics that you put in. Where can you, though, draw the line where, yes, okay, whatever production company, whatever network, constantly getting out content, but where you are able to inject yourself, where, okay, yeah, there might be this pseudo unannounced or hidden template where it's easy to fall down a pattern because we've always done it that way, but where you are able to have the chance to get very stylistic and artistic when on other shows maybe it's harder to do.
I learned that early on in my career. I learned from a gentleman who hired me actually at the station in Miami as to be an assistant director, and he was a person that thought outside the box. And he was always trying new things and doing this and doing that. And it's one of the things I said, that's not a bad idea. If you don't try something, you don't go there. For instance, you started talking about outside the norm. I'm working in a facility right now, and we do a lot of soccer, a lot. And the parent company, the client, so to speak. They have a certain vision they want to see, and so I have to abide by it. But I try to push the envelope sometimes and do my own thing. I like to cut. I don't like to sit on a wide shot, all just doing this all day long. I like to see when they're off to the races. I like to see it, the challenge. I like to see the challenge of the two players battling it out for the ball. And some people don't do that in soccer. And I cut sort of the European and the Mexican way. And one producer likes it and another one doesn't. So you have to adapt to what they want. And you know what? They're the boss. They're the client. I'm working for them. So I have to abide by what they say. As much as I want to push the envelope and I want to change things, I can only do so much because that's what the client wants.
Off of what you said, I find myself, Rick, at times a people pleaser. And as much as those in the industry, let's say they have that same trait, it is, as you were saying, impossible to please everybody. You might like a shot, but who knows what said colleague says about that shot? How do you deal with that, knowing that there's nothing perfect about a broadcast? There's
It's
a
true.
subjectiveness around it that is inevitable.
Um, I think there's always going to be a critic, and there's always going to be someone that says, "Don't do that," or "Don't do this." It's like the same thing I was talking about with the basketball game I was directed, and I shot the architecture in the building. He didn't like it. What can I do? I mean, but I wrote the executive producer, and I told him why I did it, and I never heard another word. So
Mhm.
either they hire me or they don't hire me. And but I have a philosophy, and I have my own standards, and I believe in pushing the envelope and see what works and what doesn't work. Why be cookie cutter? Every show is cookie cutter. Why be the same as everybody else? And I can't stand out as a director if I do the same show as everybody else.
Where do your director tendencies play out in your life outside of being a director in a live event where you're like, gosh, I feel like I'm taking on those behavioral traits like in other walks of life?
Listen, I'm not an expert. Okay. I was very fortunate to sit next to some very, very famous directors. And I mean, one I'll mention because I love the man and I loved him, and may he rest in peace, was Sandy Grossman, who was the lead NFL director um, for CBS and Fox. And I joined him late in his career at Fox, but we got along so well, and he was just a gentleman. He just turned to me, he says, "It's just a pleasure to work with you." His son called me up once and said, "My dad loves working with you."
Oh,
You know what? I was his technical director, but you learn from people like that. And other directors have learned from him and the way he covered football. And Bob Stenner was his producer. In fact, Bob called me a couple of weeks ago. Bob was just honored for his 50th year in the business, and I sent him a note and I said congratulations, and he called me, and I was flattered, really, really was. It was good to talk to him again. I hadn't spoken to him in a few years, but so those are, I look up to people like that. Ray Tipton was one of my directors at Fox Saturday Baseball, and Ray would do a couple of different things, like we were talking about background plates for fonts and stuff like that. And I sort of mimic what he did sometimes on Fox because it was different. And you learn from people like that, and you want to learn from people like that because they're the ones pushing the envelope.
when you, and as we wrap up this conversation, Rick, when you have a colleague say through their son calling you, the joy that it has been in working with you, how much do you feel that it's those moments to why you do what you do and why you do this?
I think we all like recognition. I mean, everyone likes a pat on the back. I'm no different than anybody else. It's nice. I'd like to know that the work that I have done has been recognized. again, combat sports. I like combat sports. I mean, a lot of people don't like it. I like it. I've been doing it for years. I worked for Showtime. I worked for independent promoters. I went down to Suriname and directed fights. And I worked did kickboxing for years and years and years. I went to Europe. I went to Japan as a technical director. I went to Japan, but I've been to Amsterdam for the kickboxing, and I was a U.S. director for the kickboxing also. And the shows that I did were with lights, and I learned from another director who was a Showtime director also, and he was just great, and it was just it was a good experience. But I mean, as a technical director, I mean, a lot of my work came from me being a technical director. I met this director, I met that director, and one thing led to another, led to another, and these opportunities just presented themselves, and it took me around the world. That's something I'm honored by. It's flattering. It really is. So it's but you learn from somebody else. You don't but you have to apply what you learn from somebody else to be different, and that's what I tried to do.
And you've done it, and you've
I
had a
think
fun.
I've had fun. Yeah. I think I've done it, and I'm still trying to do it. Showtime recently shut down their boxing operations, and I was involved with them with championship boxing. I wasn't their main person that they used, and their showbox show. I wasn't their main person, as I said, but I was. They took me to London several times. I worked with them always I was always their relief guy, and they don't get to do those shows unless you're doing something right. And I feel did something right because I just again, I was a technical director, so I really was more of a mechanic than I was a creative person. But I've taken what I've learned from them because I thought Showtime's boxing events were some of the best seen. I just think they were. I mean, there was a style to them, there was an entertainment value to them, and I tried to do that in the work that I do now for when I direct boxing.
You said it. There's a style to it. There's an entertainment that you bring to everything that you've done. And I'm going to continue on with these boxing analogies because you in the corner, you might not be the fighter, but if you're sort of the guy in the corner that everybody can rely on, the pick me up guy, I noticed that. You also said how the sport and broadcast has taken you across the world. I feel like in this conversation, it might be extrapolating here, but we've kind of gone around the world with your life and gone to different places. And that is what I was hoping to do. And we did it. And we hit on a lot of different topics, which were so fun. One of which you probably didn't think we'd go to, and me pointing out the elephant painting behind you. But I'm glad I did because I think there's something to that that's related to how you think and how you perceive beauty and your pictures, the pretty pictures that you put on screen have been of note and they will continue to flow through with whatever network and event you're doing. Rick Tugman, I'm Bryan Fenley. This was a thrill ride, a conversation that I thoroughly enjoyed, and I appreciate you going down that path with me.
Thank you, Bryan, for having me. Really appreciate it. Thank you for the opportunity.